The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Time again to check in on the latest Fall River real estate and development news. I am joined, as I am weekly, by Kevin Lawrence. He's the editor, publisher, and owner of Fall River Development News, which you can find on Facebook. Kevin, how are you this week?
Very well. Glad to be here, Keith.
All right, let's start with some news on the waterfront. You recently, were walking down on the waterfront at the Heritage State Park and the Hudner Visitor Center. That facility's been around for over 40 years.
Yes.
And it's showing its wear and tear. Talk about what you found out.
There are some serious maintenance issues at that building. Of course, that building is owned and operated by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. The building was actually constructed back in 1983, and there's very little maintenance that's been done since. So if you're a visitor and you walk through there, the first thing you notice is the floors. The condition is very poor. They are buckling, and the varnish on the floors is being removed due to water damage from the roof. I was told there were at least a dozen roof leaks happening inside that building. That's contributing to the floor damage. The other problem is the windows there are 40 plus years old. They're the original windows inside the facility, and they are leaking as well. And there's actually plants and moss growing up the walls of the building through those windows. Other problems involve the chimes at the visitor center and the bell tower. They no longer work. Also, the visitor center stairway to the bell tower is closed off. That's dilapidated as well. And their HVAC system, I went in there one afternoon and it felt like it was 100 degrees in there. They're having trouble regulating the temperature. So hopefully they'll receive some funding from the state to make these necessary repairs, because the building is really in deteriorated condition at this point.
Yeah. Do you know if there's any money available? I believe you reported that DCR has used some ARPA funding for other facilities. Is there a chance Fall River will get some?
Well, they've used it for other facilities around the state. I think there's 6 or 7 other heritage state parks within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, the Fall River Heritage State Park, the funding has not yet been allocated. There's no word from DCR as of yet. So they are hoping for some funding at some point. There was a deadline for ARPA funding. I believe it was December 31st of this year, and nothing was submitted, as far as I know, for funding to repair the Fall River Visitor Center at Heritage Park.
Yeah, I know that the ARPA funding needed to be allocated by December of 24, but spent by 2026. So we'll have to see. Maybe there is some money allocated we don't know about yet, because again, people going down there, it's obviously one of the focal points of the waterfront here in Fall River. So keeping that up is obviously not a city issue. That's a state issue. All right, moving on to some other developments on the corner of Bedford and 7th Street. There's a parcel of land there that may be a future site of an adult daycare center and some apartments.
Yes, this is owned by Cordero Properties. What was on that site was Canton's Used Cars and Geronimo's Collision Center. This is right off of Bedford Street. They're currently being used for parking by Cordero Properties, and he is now proposing 52 residential apartment units as well as an 8,800 square foot daycare facility on the ground floor. So some significant development in the downtown area. This is right across the street from Primacare, if you're not familiar with that parcel of land.
Yeah, very interesting, strategic part of downtown, close to downtown Fall River. And finally, this week, there's going to be a public hearing by the planning board next week on a potential suite of apartments, if you will, in the South End on Slade Street. Talk about that.
This is at 951 Slade Street. The brick building was formerly a daycare center. There was a proposal last year to put 15 residential apartments in that complex. It was denied by the zoning board, and he is going back to the planning board, the applicant. His name is Jamie Duff, and they're holding that public hearing on February 12th. He's now looking to put 11 apartments in there. The neighbors were very upset with the 15 apartments, so 4 fewer may convince the planning board to go ahead with that, and then it would go back to the zoning board for approval.
I know the photo you sent us, which is on the screen right now of that property. It doesn't look like it's very big, at least from the angle you have.
Yeah, so 15 apartments crammed in there might have been way too many. The neighbors were in opposition of that proposal back in January of 2024. And as I said, it was denied by the zoning board. Let's see if 11 makes the cut this time.
All right. You can find out more about Fall River Development News. Go on Facebook, search Fall River Development News, and you'll see Kevin's content pretty much on a daily basis. He posts things, and a lot of it is really intriguing. He does a lot of work in terms of what's happening in terms of development, and it's a great place to follow. Kevin, thank you for your time. We'll talk next week.
Thank you, Keith.